and Chuck Hogan. We want to welcome you to Spanglish World Network and her network on Zingo TV, channels 250 and 251. Zingo TV is a free app that can be downloaded on iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire Sticks, Roku and Roku Sticks, and all TVs 2016 and forward. Live Now is a show all about finding the synergy and body-minded spirit. Please join us as we tackle intense topics of conversation that will spur your mind, steer your soul, and give you some direction. With that said, we are excited to dive into tonight's topic with you. Here we are again. Welcome, everybody. Chuck and I are so excited to talk to you about one of our favorite topics that I can say for me, Chuck, has been monumental in shifting the direction of my life, shifting relationships with the people I have in my life. And that is exchanging expectations or trading them in for appreciation. And, you know, when I heard that, and I heard it from Tony Robbins for the first time years ago. And I never understood what it meant until I started to realize, like, all the times that I was angry, all the times that I was frustrated, all the times that I felt like I didn't have control over things. And I realized that there were so many expectations that I had from people in my life, from situations in my life that were not being met. And when they weren't being met, I turned to anger or sadness. And instead, when I started to look at each of those people or situations, and I said to myself, what can I really appreciate in this moment now? Everything changed. The anger went away. The sadness went away. Even the need to control went away.
Very true. And it's that blueprint, right? That expectation, that anticipation, the idea that we actually get to control everything that's going on in our universe. And I go, no, you don't get to control it, but you do get to decide how you engage with it. And so truly from the fundamental, if you look at it and say, is life happening for me or to me? And there's this kind of presupposition that goes along with that. And that is, okay, so if I do accept that life's happening for me, then I go, does that mean that all the challenging stuff is there for a reason and a purpose? Well, what if I actually just appreciated it rather than having this expectation that I'm supposed to fight my way through it, or that I'm supposed to like wage battle against all these different things? As there, we hear kind of opposing and conflicting information. They go, hey, when a challenge is in front of you, you got to step up. You got to burn the boats. You got to, and I go, wow, is that another expectation? Or is that someone else's narrative? Because here's the facts. The only time, my sister, we can actually trade it is if we actually know where we're living. So
right.
What is that? And I go, well, for some people, they're living in the future. Everything's future paced. It's like, okay, well, tomorrow it'll be a better day. Tomorrow. I go, well, what about now? What about this moment? Do you just have to like accept the suckiness? Or can you actually go, that was a valuable lesson?
You know, you talked about life happening for us or to us. And again, I learned that years ago, you know, giving credit to source where I heard it, Tony Robbins, but it evolved for me. It evolved with me through my coach. And she said, what if life was happening through us? It wasn't for us or to us. It was just through us. Mm-hmm. And that resonated a lot more to me because there, sure, like you said, there wasn't this force that I had to like, oh, it's happening for me, so I have to accept it. It's not happening to me, so I have to accept it. It's happening through me, so I get to accept it.
Definitely. And that gives us an opportunity to be present and listen.
Yes.
When we just get to, and that's the other part, is that it's not a have to. Like, we don't have to be on the show. We choose to, and we get to. So why is that it's so important? Because the level of appreciation I have for you, for our community, for those of you that are joining us and listening at this time, and those of you that'll join us at a future date and watch this at another time. Here's what's great. It's not about influence. It's about presence. 99.9% of the time, when Veenu and I pick a topic, this isn't stage where we go, okay, I'm going to ask you this question, and then you're going to come back. It's like, no, this is very organic. It's very esoteric. And our fervent hope is that you feel that authenticity and living in this moment. And that's just all gratitude and appreciation. There's something to go along with this too, Veenu, and that is at times, some people put a lot of pressure on themselves to find the appreciation in everything. And here's what's strange about that. That's actually an expectation.
Right. Yeah.
So
they're expecting to find appreciation, right? They have an expectation that there's an appreciation.
Right. And so what are we really talking about then? We're really talking about and sharing with everyone that the expectation is more a concept. It's a concept, and if you want to call it an altered reality, that somewhere in your life, your values, your rules, how you grew up, the environment that you were raised in, that it set this expectation, it set this narrative within you. We'll call it a default mechanism. Because you didn't go out and actively go, I am going to live my life like this. Boom, 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 boom. But you found yourself living in reaction to different things and going, oh, that seemed unfair. Oh, that didn't feel quite right. Oh, and it's like, okay, why? Now, we can go ahead and try and analyze it. What if we did exactly what Veenu was saying, though? We were just like going, we were present and allowing things to flow through us. And in that moment, you just realized, I don't have to judge this. I can, in fact, I don't even have to accept it, but I can acknowledge it. And living in that space of acknowledgement in that moment, it's like, I can learn to appreciate this. In fact, if anything, I can find the beauty in almost anything around me. And yet there will still see some things that are happening in this world, which we may go, you know, there's civil unrest, Chuck, in all parts of this world right now. And boy, you don't have to look far to find it, because it's where? It's front and center, it's on the news, it's right in front of you, and people are being lambasted by all this information. But is that your reality? Is that your reality? Is that my reality? Is that how, you know, I really do believe that we could be sympathetic to every single person if it's in Ukraine, if it's in Israel, if it's in Taiwan. Maybe it's the person down the street right now who's standing outside and trying to find a way to have a hot meal tonight. Could you find the appreciation for that person, right? Because I'm sitting here in this beautiful hotel room, you're sitting in your beautiful home, and I go, okay, what are we worried about? We're sitting here on technology that allows us to touch millions of lives. And it's like, wow, how much gratitude. Think back 50 years ago, what this would have looked like.
Well, we wouldn't be looking like this because we wouldn't have this. You know, I mean, you've said a couple of things. Number one, I remember watching the Jetsons, not 50 years ago, but I'm sure they were around 50 years ago. I probably watched them 47 years ago. And I remember them like talking to each other on their telephones, but they could see each other. And I was like, can you imagine, you know, when I was like 7, 8 years old, whatever, can you imagine being able to like look at somebody and actually talk to them and see their facial expressions? You know, having Rosie just put in things and spit out the homework for Elroy. We're like, what? You could just, a robot could spit it out. Now we have ChatGPT. You know, it's just interesting where we've come from that time. And I think when we go into deeper about appreciation, though, we go into the feeling of gratitude. You know, I was just talking to a client of mine today, and one of the things, you know, I work with families a lot, and I had the privilege of being with my friend Tammy and her niece, and in Utah not too long ago. And it really defined the program that Tammy and I are doing in January called Thriving Together. And Tammy's like, what do we want this to be about? And I'm like, I get it. We want this about bringing harmonious families. And she says, what does harmony look like to you? And I said, what your niece represented. Like, everyone's working hard. Mom's working hard. Dad's working hard. There's 5 kids. They're going to school. They're doing this. They're doing that, extracurricular activities. And yet they still have time to come together for a meal. And mom would not eat or sit down. We wouldn't even pray until dad came to the table. And even though, dad said, go ahead, she wanted to go check on her husband. I was like, wow, that is love. Like, she will not eat until she checks on her husband to make sure. And it wasn't about obeying or anything like that. It was that love, that love for him. And I asked her, I said, is it always like this? And she says, we don't always get dinner together. It's just reality. You know, everyone's doing so much. She says, but what we do is come together in the morning. And when they have their devotional, and not everybody has devotional, not everybody prays like that, but everybody could find gratitude together. So long story short, that's what I offer my families. Like, I learn from other families and I give strategies. And so I told this one family, I said, what if you guys had a morning of gratitude? Just everyone get up at 6 o'clock. By 6:30, everyone gathers around in the living room and you guys just write out what you're going to be grateful for that day. And my client, he's always writing like dad, mom, bike, computer, friends, bike. And I asked him, I said, just today, I said, it's really cold where I live right now in North Carolina. And there's a lot of homeless people that live out in the city where I'm at. And it makes me so grateful that I have a comfy bed, that not only do I have clothes on my back, but I choose which clothes I want on my back every day. There's a choice. That if I'm really hungry, I can go to my fridge and grab some food. And I have a choice of what food I get to eat. And I'm warm at night. Yes. I have a heater, I have a fireplace, and all these little things. It's not just appreciation. It goes into deep gratitude.
Definitely. We had an instance, and about a year ago, we had some major storms last February. And there was this epic ice storm. I mean, it's like banana. So took out a lot of the power grid.
Yep.
And and when you're sitting there, talk about finding a new level of appreciation, because you're like going, ruh-roh, there's no TV. And you'd swear like the world is ending. Now there's flashlights and candles. And we have, and this was really cool. So we have a gas-fired fireplaces, 2 of them. And so we knew that if we went ahead and just ignited the fireplace, here's the crazy part, it has a battery backup. So you just hit the switch on the wall. And as long as there's gas flowing to the house, you have heat. Well, we actually pulled up the sofa against the fireplace, and our daughters fell asleep on the sofa next to this wonderful fire. And in that moment, to see the light flickering and them asleep, sound asleep, comfortable, it was one of those heartwarming opportunities where you go, wow, in spite of what could happen, freezing pipes, yada, 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 that really didn't even cross our mind. It was like, this is really cool that they can be together, sister to sister, in this space, in this moment, and that we're all having this experience. Now, in a couple hours, the power came back on. We sent the girls to bed. The central heating kicked on in the entire house, and we were all snug as bugs in a rug. Before that moment, those couple of hours, I remember Julie and I just sitting up and conversing, and I was like, how amazing is this? So what's the difference? We could have gotten perturbed. We could have, been spewing blasphemy at the energy companies, and how could they not be out fixing the transformers and, rallying the troops to go ahead and make sure that our cable television was on. And that didn't come on for like 3 days, by the way. I mean, electricity being out is one thing. Then all of a sudden you're like going, ooh, you took away all my communication capacity. But did they really? Because I'm like, still have the phones, still have cellular service. So we become so spoiled in some ways.
Yeah.
And living in this 21st century, right? And simple things like running water, food, having toilets that flush within your home,
Yes.
where you don't have to go out to a shed or a hole in the ground in the middle of freezing temperatures in the middle of the night.
Or get a bucket of water to flush the toilet.
Yes. The answer is yes. I mean, it's like going, or that you get a bucket of snow and melt it so you have drinking water.
You know, it's funny that you say that, though, because I always think of this, the more that we have, the more can go wrong. You know, I always thought about that, like with the cars, like all the bells and whistles we have on cars now. And it's the bells and whistles that go out first, than the regular car, you know?
Isn't that the truth? Having had a vehicle that just happened to, I mean, like, it's so funny you say that. We were just talking about this today. And we were talking about, do you remember our first cars? And they were both manual stick shift vehicles. Cranking up and down the windows. Oh my gosh. Like, I had a 1974 Super Beetle. It doesn't get more basic. There was no air conditioning.
I know. I tell you,
exhaust blowing through a tube that heated up. And then you're like praying. It's like, going, hey, if you want more heat, press harder on the gas pedal, because that's the only thing generating heat in this car.
But it's so true where we're at in our lives today, you know. And I'll say this, that I'm teaching my kids not to say we're so lucky. What I tell my kids to say is how grateful they are.
Yes.
You know,
how blessed.
I don't believe it was luck. I believe it's like a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that get us where we're at a lot of times.
Definitely.
And I'll also, you know, want to say about this appreciation. First of all, we have somebody joining us from Australia. I love that we're like worldwide, Chuck. I love that. I love that. Hello, Paulina. I love her. You know, my daughter was saying, I think it was my daughter or my son today at dinner, they were saying how, it was my son. He was like, you know, when we watch TV at lunch, I'm like, why do you guys watch TV at lunch? Why don't you guys socialize? He's like, that's what I want to do. He's like, but I don't like the girls anymore in the class. And I'm like, why don't you like the girls anymore in the class? He's like, because every time they pull up an old phone or something from the olden days, they go, ooh. And I'm like, a phone is ooh? He's like, yes. You know, back in the day, Mom. And I'm like, back in the day, like 20 years ago, like we were that, you know? And he said, and the girl said, I just don't know how anybody existed back then. And it was so funny because it was literally this conversation tonight. And I was thinking to myself, and my husband and I looked at each other, we were so lucky to exist back then.
Oh.
And I said, we were telling our son, it was funny because my husband grew up here in North Carolina. I grew up in California, but how we both would get grounded for coming in late because all we wanted to do is be outside and play.
Yep.
I was even talking to my client today. I'm like, what do you do with your friends outside on your electric bikes? Electric bikes, by the way. He's like, we just ride around La Jolla. And I'm like, doesn't it get boring? He's like, no. I mean, because you got to think, they all have the same bike. They all go the same speed. Who's going to win? At least when you have a manual bike, I guess that's what they're called now. There's competition, you know, like who is going to go, who had the muscles, who, you know, we would get off our bikes. We would play, you know, snake in the grass, three flies up. Like we make up all these games and all the neighborhood kids. Yep. Yes. Red Rover. You know, like
hide and go seek. Hide and go seek was like an Olympic event in our neighborhood.
Yes. And we would get so in trouble. And I was telling my kids, I said, when the streetlights came on, you heard my mom yelling my name, Veenu. And I hated it. And I'd be like, oh, gotta go, guys. Somebody else got to take my place. We thrived off living outside. and now it's like everything is inside. And again, this is where I think expectations have come from. The expectation of being entertained, the expectation of having everything that you need at your fingertips. We have created this world of expectations, and we have not done our best, if you would, to understand appreciation even more.
100%, Veenu. And it's to your point. I mean, if we really think about this for a second, there's an argument to be created in today's environment. And that is, I can say from a parenting perspective, we've done so much to give the perception of opportunity to our kids. It's like, what about education? Best education. What about, tutoring or resources? It's like, you will move mountains to make sure that they feel supported, loved, and appreciated. And I was reminded today, as my son Cole gets ready to graduate this next weekend from university, and I know, I mean, it's like, okay, little boy's a grown man and moving on in this world, and you've had a great influence in his life. You are his strategist and a dear friend. You're his on TV, and there's people that Julie and I look at with nothing but utmost gratitude and appreciation. You're my sister. We love you. And I look at this and go, it takes a village.
It does.
Here's what I also know. We have all made sure that we don't allow them to skate and not have the appreciation of the lessons that have come and landed on their doorstep as well. And that is something that I know we both are adamant about. It's giving experiences is one thing. Bulldozing the ground ahead of them is not even an opportunity. And people go, why? Why wouldn't you just clear the path? And the truth is, there's a road and there's a path, but there's boulders, there's pebbles, there's sand, there's mud, there's ice, there's hills and valleys and ups and downs and curves and switchbacks. And I, for one, know that my children have the capacity to navigate it, that they have the ability to be able to rationalize. It doesn't mean it's always going to be easy. Thank goodness, because I've seen what's happening now, and there are a couple of generations of some very delicate flowers,
right,
that they cannot get out of their own way. And it's frightening. It's actually, it's almost dumbfounding to see people fold when they're being told no, or not yet, or you're not ready. And they're almost offended, and it's like an affront. And I go, wow, where did that level of expectation come from that this was supposed to be easy?
I like what our friend Dean says, that life is simple. It's not easy.
Yeah.
But 100%. We're not, like, at your point, we're not doing that. We're not teaching our kids that. Our kids get in a fight. We're like, well, why'd you get in a fight? Oh, well, I'll go talk to the teacher for you. Whoa. Where's the ownership?
Yeah,
where do we teach our kids this? I remember my son telling me 2 years ago, he's like, I can't believe I have a C. And I'm like, well, what do you need to do to bring that C up? And he's like, I don't know. Will you talk to the teacher? And I'm like, no, it's not my C. I said, buddy, I did that grade years ago. Like, I'm done. I'm not responsible for that grade anymore.
It's your new math, not my new math. It's your new math.
Right. And he needed to go. And the thing is that I didn't want him to think that I didn't support him. So I said, you go find out from the teacher what you need to do, and I'll be here to support you in figuring that out.
Right.
I said, but you need to take that step. It's your grade. You earned that C, And if you want to earn a B or an A, you got to figure out what's your gap. And we've always continued that. And I'm going to tell you, here's the difference. My mom was a single mom. My mom went to law school at night. There was nobody at home waiting for me to say, Veenu, do your homework. There was no one to go over my homework. There was no one to make sure I did my homework. There was no one, and here's a new one, to make sure I turned my homework in. A whole nother subject. Like, I don't understand why kids do their work and they don't turn it in, but that is a thing. Yep. I experienced it with one of my sons, experienced with a lot of clients, but nobody was there. I had to learn my own worth in doing it. Like, what did it mean to me? What did it mean to me to understand the homework? If I didn't understand it, it taught me to ask for help. It taught me to learn how to be resourceful. It taught me resilience when I couldn't get it and I couldn't get it right and I got the bad grade and I had to go figure it out, how to get extra credit, beg for extra credit. You know, it taught me how to go look up resources and find out how to research things. And all those skills have helped me be who I am today. Without that opportunity, I don't know if I'd be where I am today, because, you know, when you and I were growing up, that was the generation where moms were now going to work. Moms were we were no longer the Leave It to Beaver homes anymore. Like, that left in the 60s and early 70s.
Ward and June were not at the helm, you know.
They were not. And
you brought up a really great point. I actually believe in the pursuit of having to find information that wasn't at your fingertips. You know, we grew up during the time of the Yellow Pages, and they said, let your fingers do the walking. Well, here's the deal. There was a lot of walking going on, and there was microfiche, and there was the Dewey Decimal System. And when I was doing a report, I would literally go to the library and check out this really newfangled thing called a book. And
we weren't allowed to, wait, hold on a second. We weren't allowed to check out encyclopedias. We had to sit there and write everything out on cue cards or photocopy if you had 5 cents per page or 2 cents, whatever it was back then. So some books were not able to check out.
That's right. So you had to write down all your notes and take them with you and organize things. And you know, people go, okay, what was the big deal, Chuck? And I go, you learn to be resourceful. You learn to be resistant. You wanted the good grade. In fact, I'll put it a different way. If you needed to excel, then you would, and as Asians, we have this tendency to think about this. And they go, well, what do you mean? I go, education is a lifestyle.
Yep.
It's the benchmark. It's your existence. It's what's your ranking in your class.
It is our culture.
You go to university. And I was just having a conversation with a friend today, and he goes, I'm not encouraging my daughter to go to college. And I was like, he goes, what do you think of that? And I said, outstanding.
Good for you.
What's the aspiration? And he said, I'm actually going to pay for her to go into an elite environment of entrepreneurial mindset, envisioning, where she's going to spend a year in immersion and learn from other people and build networking skills and figure out what it is. Because there are folks going to school who are going, you can go ahead and get a job. And what do you think that this position's worth to you? And they go, okay, 150K. It's like, okay, great. For most people's brains, they go, that's a great income as a 23, 24-year-old coming out of college and making it in the world. But what if your outcome is to be $1 million a year earner, and you're like going, I'm not doing that working for someone else. So what's the path to get there? And they go, wow, that's a lofty expectation. And hear the languaging. That's a lofty expectation. What makes you think you can do it? Well, I know as a business strategist, I actually help people build 7, 8, 9-figure per year businesses. They do. Yet, if I look at my business models and I go, am I earning 7, 8, 9 figures right now? And it's like, no, not there yet. How is it, though, that you can help instruct other people? And then I'm reminded, the coach on the field isn't the one running the football. In fact, he makes the plays. He shows other people with the talent how to go ahead and get there further, farther, faster. And he helps orchestrate everything. So now there's ecology. There's blending of skill sets, talent, community. But he doesn't have to be the one running the football. He doesn't have to be the one passing the ball.
You know, it's funny because there's, again, you talked about so many different expectations of going to college, expectations of a coach. Because I mean, I know like you must have like this great family, harmonious, give your kids that, open, trusting space to communicate. No, my family's not like that a lot of times. I have 6 kids. I got step kids. I got different families coming in here, and not all my kids feel they can communicate with us. Not all my kids think I'm the greatest mom, and that's okay, because you know what, there's different perceptions. But again, I'm the player in my life, but that's why I have a coach, right? Like that's why I have a coach. That's why I think everybody needs a coach, because we have multiple. We need people outside to give us direction and let go of that expectation that I have to have my life perfect in order to coach other people on this. Do I know what it looks like? Do I have the strategies to get there? Yes. But I also need to be reminded that I'm not following, or I need to do some tweaking, and I need to do something different too. And I'm the first one to say I'm very vulnerable about that by no means do I sit on this high horse going, my life is amazing and I'm going to make yours life amazing too. Here's what I have to say. My life has had lots of learning opportunities. I continue to learn, and I continue to be able to share with the world the strategies that I've learned to make my life better. And I continue to make my life better, to take ownership in where I'm not doing great and to make it even better, because that's what life is about. It's not about counting those moments of saying, oh, I had this expectation of I have to be this and I have to be that, because let's just appreciate where we're at. Let's appreciate what we have. With college, going back to that subject, there was an expectation, especially for us being from Asian families, that, education was our culture. It was the family name. Like, my kid not go to college. I remember when I was telling my mom I was graduating with my bachelor's degree, I said, are you coming? She goes, why? It's just a bachelor's. Just a bachelor's? She's like, let me know when you're graduating with your master's or your PhD. Well, that never happened. Newsflash. I decided to take a different route. But here's what it is. I have clients that literally go tap into their kids' college funds to pay for the coaching that I give their kids, because I am giving them a different opportunity in life to, number one, know their identity, know what their worth is, know what self-worth is, because kids don't even know what self-worth is, know what self-love is. They know how to love others, but they don't know how to love themselves. And that is more valuable.
They know how to love others the way that they think that they're supposed to show love
others, but they don't know how to love themselves. And so these are fundamental things that school doesn't teach, that college is not going to teach you. Kids have an expectation. Once I get out of high school and I get to college, then life changes. No, you're still socially awkward. Nothing changed. It's a bigger situation, a bigger pond, now you're in an ocean. You went from a pond to an ocean with the same person that you were, because you did not have those fundamentals of learning self-love, learning self-worth, not having to impress other people, because you want to learn what appreciation is.
Well, and it's really migrated now into adulthood, to your point, that there are people who are living in a space where they think that the expectation is that, oh, I met someone and now I just freely give my body to whomever, because it's like, whoa, or they give their heart or their emotions, and they're like, oh, I met this person and now I'm in love. And you're like, going, no, you're in deep like. And in fact, you just met this person. You don't even know who they are. Oh, I know them. I know their soul. I know. It's like, wow, okay. And then 3 weeks later, a month later, and for some people, it's even a year later. Because what's been accepted now is that, oh, I need my own time. And so I only want to see these people when I make the time. My expectation is I'm a busy person. And I go, that's cool. And there's no judgment around it. But let's not create a false narrative and a story to support all this hullabaloo. It's like going, no, you're insecure as heck. You're scared like to the nth degree. And so you put on these different masks so you don't have to be who you are. And yet you wonder why you're not having a meaningful relationship. See, I know, how do I know this? Because you and I talk unadulterated. It's like, we put it out there. It's like, I know you're not judging me. I'm not judging you. We get to have really robust conversations. I know you have the same conversations with Brian. I have the same conversations with Julie. And we have these conversations with our kids. Here's where it gets messy. Everyone has a different expectation as to the type of languaging and how a conversation should go. And it's like, wait, what? But we had a conversation. We talked about this. No,
Right.
You shared. I didn't understand. Yet somewhere we go, did you hear me? Were you listening? And then it's like, well, did you hear yourself? Were you listening to yourself? Because that made no sense in respect to how I view our life. And yet I'm supposed to understand. And then let's go back to the appreciation part. Because if I didn't take every word at face value, but I just appreciated the fact that someone was pouring their heart out to me at that time, sharing their authenticity, their concerns, their fears, their hopes, their aspirations, and asking for more opportunities to connect, would that be enough to heal wounds and to create more opportunity just to have this? And I go, wow. Wow. So what do we get to let go of? This expectation.
And I think when we do that, also it lets go of that judgment that you're talking about, about like the friendship that you and I have cultivated over the years. It's, you said it, there's no judgment. And when there's no judgment, there's no expectations. There's no expectations of who you need to be in front of me or vice versa. There's no expectations how you need to answer or I need to answer. It's just to be there and be present. You said that in the beginning of this talk, right? It's to be present now, without the judgment, without the filters of who I think you need to be. And, oh, Chuck, you're not that person. What, you did that? Wait. You're not allowed to do that because I had an expectation, I had a filter that you were this other person. And God knows you did this now. And, oh, you need to be shunned to Prison Island, to Australia. Go to Australia.
You're exiled. You're off the island. Taking you off the island.
All of a sudden, it's that appreciation for friendship to say, I see you. I feel
where they're at, right? Like it's meeting people where they're at. I respect people. And I heard this from the Reverend Michael Beckwith. He said, religion is for people who are trying to avoid hell. Spirituality is for people who have already lived through it. I respect the spirituality, the spirit, the nature, the intention of someone who is willing to go ahead and take on the mortal toil and try and figure out, like, for self. And it's not that they're looking for better. This is something, and again, this is part of expectation. As I hear this all the time, level up, come on, raise your standards, set a new standard, step up. I'll give credit to source. Date with Destiny, all these different things. I go, awesome. And here's the truth. I don't need to step up. I don't need for it to be better. What I'm really looking for, because there's a presupposition if I'm looking for better. And that means where I'm living now is not a blessing. It's not a gift. There's no gratitude. So it's kind of like this. There's a level of hypocrisy. Live in a beautiful state, but always be leveling up. And I go, wait, then how is that a beautiful state? Because a beautiful state is honoring who you are now. So I made it a point in my life. I aspire to just be open to different. Because that doesn't negate, marginalize, minimalize where I'm living now. In fact, it's the opposite. It honors it.
I will say this. I do appreciate the word step up for me personally, because it reminds me of when I'm just playing the mediocre feel. But it's not just step up, it's step up and step in. Like step into it, step into life.
So the distinction.
Step up, because I do always feel like, for me, what's next?
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned here's why I think you're right, and here's why I think it's different. When I was living in the world of step up, I was never present with what I did. I was like, okay, step up. I got it. Okay, what's next? Step up. Okay, what's next? And it worked. Like I rocketed in my life. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
great. And about 3 years ago, I was going so fast, I forgot what I even accomplished. I forgot to
Mm-hmm.
celebrate along the way until our good friend Joseph McClendon III brought to my attention, like, what are you celebrating? And I'm like, I mean, what am I celebrating? I'm celebrating where I'm at. Did I
Sure.
celebrate along the way? No, I forgot. I was too busy stepping up. And that's when I realized I need to step up and step in. I need to step into where I'm at. I need to appreciate. And once I'm done appreciating and celebrating where I'm at, and
Mm-hmm.
I've done it all in that moment, then it's ready to step up and then, and redo and redo. But
Yeah.
it's not just step up, step up, step up, because then you're just taking steps up the ladder and you're not even looking at the view that you've just climbed.
It's never about the one thing. It's about everything. And you and I speak about this a lot. It's never about the one thing. Stepping up is beautiful. I don't bemoan the step up part. Live up. Live in this moment. Live so that way
Yes.
we have this opportunity, because stepping up is really the actionable side of it. And we know that you can have all the best intention, but if you don't step in it and step up to it, then it's not going to happen. But it
Right.
requires something. And I know a lot of people who are living in this step up ideology, and they're never living in the moment. And so they're entire, we all have. And that's why for me, it got to a point where to step up without knowing the foundation and living now. We talk about this. This show is called Live Now. Yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery. Live now.
Right.
Grow now. Advance now. But more so, appreciate now. When appreciation is the spark behind the opportunities and possibilities, oh my gosh, it is like napalm. It is absolute fire and fuel to help elevate all of us to grow at an unprecedented rate.
Well, it takes
However,
away. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, please go ahead. It takes away what?
Well, I wanted to say the appreciation takes away the fear of failure, the fear of sadness, the fear of depression, the fear of, I'm not good enough, when you just sit in appreciation.
And I'm reminded oftentimes that the push doesn't always create pull. And so there are times when you have momentum, like 3 years ago, and if you feel like it's a push or someone's pushing behind you, you're going so fast that you don't even have an opportunity to be in the moment. Yet I'm reminded that if someone puts their hand out to give you a hand up, to support love, okay, what's the difference? If you're pushing me from behind, it's awfully difficult to invite to give me a hug. And sometimes what we're looking for is that harmonious, if we speak about this, it's never about one or the other. It's never about balance. It's about harmony. And this is where if all we do is lean forward constantly, or we're constantly just driving, stepping up, stepping up, stepping up, stepping up, I go, wow, you're going to be to the top of the building. So then do you step off? Because you've already gotten to this highest elevation. And so what do a lot of achievers do? What have I done in the past? I know what you've done in the past. We look for the next building. And then I'm reminded about something. You need to go all the way back down. Because it's not that the journey's ended. It's actually that we get to go ahead and trade different expectations, and we can appreciate the journey. And here's the beautiful part, in the universe, and God and energy gives us this. As you're walking down the stairs, gravity takes over.
Mm.
Now you almost feel like you're being pulled, literally and figuratively. That's the physics of this.
Right.
And you get to get back. It's like, wow.
And just feeling grounded, right? It's just like a lot of what you're saying is so much metaphors in there too. Just being grounded and appreciate. Again, it just comes down to appreciation. And I can't tell all our listeners enough how, if they just shifted this one thing in their life today, tonight, tomorrow morning, wherever you're out in the world, right? Because it's morning for some people and night for others. Really take on that practice. Like, I invite you guys this week to take on that practice and just in a week, see how your life changes. That when you're angry or when you're fearful or when you're upset, and just ask yourself in this moment, just put your hand on your heart for a moment and just ask yourself, what can I appreciate in this moment right now? And watch whatever it is, just change. Your mood changes, your whole state changes, your emotional state changes in that moment. Your focus changes in that moment because now you're just focused on what you can appreciate. And all of a sudden, you know, things inside of you just start to feel different and you can make a different decision in that emotional state when you're just appreciating instead of like, oh no, I expect them to do this, expect them to do that. And here's the other thing. I'll tell you, Chuck, we were expecting to close on a house on last Thursday, and my flight got delayed. And here's the funny thing. It takes 10 minutes to put a bolt on a screw on an airplane, but it took 2 hours to get the paperwork from Dallas back communicated to West Palm Beach, Florida. So I missed my flight from Charlotte to home, which is like a 45-minute flight, by the way. So what would have taken me with a layover 3.5 hours to get home, it took me 8 hours to get home. And, you know, I wasn't feeling well. I was sick that day and until yesterday. And the closing actually got postponed. And I was like so upset at first. I'm like, no. We said we're going to close on Thursday. I got the power of attorney and everything because my husband wasn't going to be there. And we got it. And I was so frustrated. Who knew that I was not going to be even present to do the closing anyway? You don't even recognize. And here's the deal. I actually used this opportunity of the skill that I'm giving our listeners tonight. When I found out that it wasn't going to close the day before, I was upset for a split second. And then I put my hand on my heart and I'm like, what can I appreciate?
Yes.
And I found different things to appreciate in that, little things like, oh, it's going to save me. I don't need the power of attorney. It's going to save me this money and just little things, right? You don't need to look at big things, appreciation, just little things. And then when my flight got all debacled, I appreciated it even more. There was such a deep appreciation. So sometimes we can't see what the big guy upstairs can see. He has a better view than we do.
When you're manifesting things, I was reminded of this by a friend of mine, and it's Harry Singa. And Harry had mentioned, he said, you know, the universe is kind of like the Amazon of life. You ask, and all you need to do is click the button, and it shows up.
I love Harry.
Sometimes it's what you are looking for specifically, and other times you unconsciously ordered some things that show up. Here's the interesting part about that exchange, though. You can appreciate it, but if you're not home to receive it, then the universe is delivered, but you weren't present to acknowledge it and take ownership of it. So it's left on the porch where someone else can go ahead and abscond with what you requested. Or it gets delivered to a neighbor, but you don't know which neighbor. There was no note left. So now you need to go look for it. And you're wondering, I ordered this, but why did it not show up? It did show up, but you weren't ready for it.
Right.
So when we're in appreciation, it actually shifts our presence to the moment so that you're home.
Also probably what you say you've talked a lot in our past shows about energy and our
Yes.
levels of energy, and it probably raises our frequency when we're in appreciation.
Definitely.
So
Definitely.
it's been another great show with you, Chuck, as usual. Thank you so much. And again, to our listeners all over the world, remember to trade expectations for appreciation and see how it's going to change your life.
It's a beautiful opportunity.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Live Now with Veenu, Keller and Chuck Hogan. Follow us on Instagram at Veenu Inspires and at Chuck Hogan Now. For more about Veenu, please visit VeenuInspires.com. And for Chuck, please check out YBLNow.com. This show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out SpanglishWorld.ca for all your news and programming. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it.